Welcome to the Wellness on Purpose podcast, your go-to source for impactful, educational, and realistic information designed to propel you forward on your journey to intentional well-being, not just for today, but for the well-being of future generations. Join us as we dive into insightful conversation with industry and brand leaders in the ever-evolving landscape of the health and wellness industry. Discover the latest trends, gain valuable perspectives, and uncover practical tips to elevate your wellness journey starting today. This podcast is brought to you by Joanne's Place Health Foods, your trusted partner in health, located in the heart of Peterborough and Lindsay, Ontario. I'm your host, Marissa Laughlin, and I'm thrilled to be guiding you through this season of the Wellness on Purpose podcast. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Wellness on Purpose podcast, your go-to for all things health and wellness. So happy to be back here today, and I am joined by a previous guest, Dr. Briana Lutz, who is a brand education manager and medical advisor for the St. Francis Herb team. So she's been on the podcast previously. We talked about strengthening your immunity, your digestive function, and she is just really, really down to earth and gives you the facts. So love that about her. And if you're unaware of St. Francis as a brand, they are one of the tried and true brands in the health and wellness industry because they've been in this industry for over 30 years. And they are a team of herbalists, naturopathic doctors, and they are really great at cultivating, researching, educating different herbs and what they do for the body. And they are really known for being the drivers of herbs in our industry. So kudos for them for being such a therapeutic support to our community. I know myself, I love this brand. I use a lot of their formulations day to day for myself as well as my clients, and they are just very tried and true. So love them for that. So for today's episode, we are talking all things cleansing and detoxification because as the spring rolls through here, we know that there's a big conversation around safe detoxification. And we really want to get away from those fast, restrictive dieting, juicing, those types of trendy short-term cleanses. And we want to look at building a sustainable and effective way to detoxify the body literally all year round. And Dr. B is going to talk to us about that today, and I'm looking forward to it. So without further ado, let's get her on here, and she's going to share her wealth of information about detoxification. Hello, Dr. B. Welcome back to the Wellness on Purpose podcast. So happy to have you back on. How are you doing so far rolling through 2024 as we are, entering the springtime? How are you doing?
I'm doing really well. Today's like a perfect example of spring. It's like 16 degrees here and everything's melting. So it feels very springy today. So this is very appropriate. Yeah.
Oh, I love that. It snowed here in Ontario today.
Yep, that's Canada. Yeah.
Yeah, classic spring. Like last week we had the plus 16 and it was gorgeous. And then, we just got to get a few more of those colder days in there before we can actually, see the light at the end of the tunnel. So speaking of springtime, what I wanted to talk to you today is the big conversation around spring cleansing, because we know that this time of year we get this itch. We're cleaning the inside of our houses, our garage, we're starting to prep our gardens, all of those routines of cleaning come back into our daily or like weekly routines. So we're going to talk a little bit more about cleansing of the body today because I think it's an important conversation to have as I see people come into the store and go, I want a 10-day cleanse. I want this type of cleanse. I want only a liver cleanse, only a kidney cleanse. And I think there's some, debunking that we can do in terms of this conversation so that our listeners know what they're getting themselves into and also can appreciate the type of cleansing that can happen longer than 10 days, more or less that year-round cleansing type of support, because that's what I tend to recommend and also practice myself. I don't know about you.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think from like even a terminology perspective, like cleanse versus like detox or like detoxification, because cleanse to me feels very short term, quick, kind of like a shotgun approach versus like detoxification is more of an ongoing process. And that's generally what I'm trying to shift people towards.
Yes, same. So before we get into talking about those two types of, detoxification and cleanses, I want to start with let's point out the obvious. What are the top signs and symptoms that somebody would recognize and think to themselves, maybe it's time to do some type of cleaning up inside the body to better support myself as we move through the spring?
I would say a lot of the symptoms are pretty vague and they can be from a lot of other different contributions to those symptoms. So, feelings of like sluggishness, fatigue, brain fog, overall like congestion or like congestion of the skin can be another symptom. But I say that overall kind of like bleh feeling, like very medical, like feeling bleh would be like signs that they might need a little bit of detoxification or a little bit of additional support there.
Yeah, I would say that like the feeling is like it is kind of general because we know as we go through winter, we like get into that like bleh, we need some sunshine type of feeling. But like as we start to see the sunshine and we still are hanging on to those, like I'm just not feeling 100% myself or like energized or like ambition to do anything that's at least kind of the symptoms I see where I'm like, okay, something isn't adding up here. I need to do a little bit of a reset. And as you said, there's a couple different approaches that some people would take. We know that that type of like cleansing outline is that short term, very intense 5, 7, 10, maybe even 30 days. And they can come with a lot of really, really intense side effects for such a short term payoff. So, professionally speaking, why would you typically not recommend these short term quick fixes?
Yeah, oftentimes the short-term quick fixes are very what I call like purgative in nature. So people will use not necessarily emetics, like things that they would make them like vomit, but more so like laxatives or purgative type laxatives, other things that are trying to like stimulate their system or flush out certain tissues, which over and again that's why those things are short term, because over the long term, if people were doing those quite consistently, their body can create like a reliance on that. Like laxatives are a perfect example where your bowels can actually become like create a resistance or a reliance to those different laxatives. And we can have more tissue irritation and we can cause like more inflammation and those types of things in the long term. And again, lots of like really terrible symptoms, right? You're sticking by a toilet for how many days or how many hours. And again, especially if our body can't keep up with these type purgative things, we can see a lot of rebound symptoms, headaches, migraines. Again, skin issues can come up with that, bowel irritation, cramping, all of these different symptoms when we're pushing our system a little too far.
Yeah. I mean, I know myself entering the health and wellness industry and also just being in a generation where like cleansing was like that conversation with our parents. I would say like I definitely dove in and doing those short term, cleanses to see what happened. And I can pretty much guarantee every time I did them, which wasn't a lot, but like whenever I did do them, um, it's almost like those symptoms of feeling blah or feeling like just not myself came back like tenfold within like a very short amount of time.
Mm-hmm.
So, as we said, very short lived. And I always now try to describe them as like those things are really just scratching the surface. They're not really getting into that full detoxification, which is a little bit different. Those cleansing short term types of kits and things like that are scratching that surface, getting things moving, getting you into those deep side effects of headaches, migraines, dehydration. But I think it's so important to talk about the deep layers and what that actually looks like. And that's more or less that daily detoxification. And that's really supportive for our long term and our vitality. So, can you talk a little bit more about how that's working a little bit differently than, say, that short term cleanse?
So our body innately is detoxifying all day, every day. We don't have to do anything, right? Our body has these built-in mechanisms, these built-in pathways that are doing that on a day-to-day basis. So in that way, and I always like to frame it to people like you are not toxic, because I think there's a bit of this culture around it, where people get very scared and they think that they need to do all of these steps and become very overwhelmed with detoxifying their life, that it becomes more of a burden than actually something that's really helpful for them. So we just like to say that definitely your body is detoxing all day, every day. Where we get hung up sometimes is some of our daily habits or daily practices are actually contradicting some of these pathways. Like I always ask people, like, did you get outside today? Like, were you outside in fresh air? Did you get sunshine? And were you surrounded by trees, right? Like that is, or getting fresh air. That is again a detox mechanism. We're using our lungs and our kidneys. Again, these are two systems that are very interconnected. That are one of these emunctories or these detoxification or these organs of elimination. Or how much water did you drink today? Did you poop today, right? Because constipation and limiting through your bowels, like that is absolutely key. Did you sweat today? Did you move your body? Or I always like to say, did you move your lymph today? Because some people, maybe they can't get like a good workout in, but maybe they could move their lymph in another way or their secondary circulation in another way. So certainly we have all these built-in pathways. How are we supporting them? And again, that's figuring out how we're doing that on a day-to-day basis, maybe removing those habits that are impeding them, and then we can get a little bit deeper with other modalities if we need to.
I want to circle back to the are you having a bowel movement every day? Because this is probably the most common conversation I have with people who are starting some type of cleanse. Even if it has a laxative component, it's so, so important to make sure that whatever you're doing for, trying to cleanse or detoxify the body, all of those, we'll say toxins that are potentially built up in your body, they have to go somewhere. So if they're not moving through your stool, where do you think they're going? If you're not sweating, if you're not urinating, they have to get out of the body. Otherwise, they will recirculate back into the system. And that's
Mhm.
also why I believe for myself, some of those reactions where I have such severe symptoms doing a cleanse was that I wasn't having that bowel movement. So I would just have more and more symptoms present, and it was just so uncomfortable. Quick pause in today's episode because I want to talk to you about a transformational online program. In case you missed it, Joanne's Place released an online program called the Wellness on Purpose Program to Educate You last year. And our intention with this program is to make this education more accessible for our community to better support their wellness journeys. This program promotes sustainable and realistic changes, and it really focuses on the foundational pillars of every single person's health: your nutrition, your sleep, your stress, and also movement. If you want to get started today, click the link in the description below to learn more about the Wellness on Purpose program. By the way, it's completely free, and you can move at your own pace from the comfort of your own home. Now let's get back to the episode. And as you've said, some of those detoxification, well, I guess all of the detoxification pathways, they work together. They work synergistically as a holistic process, multiple organs throughout the body. Can you talk a little bit more about why it's important to consider all of those detoxification organs and not just one?
Mhm. I think there's a different toxins is like, just we'll call them toxins. Yeah. These like metabolic byproducts, environmental factors, any of these things, we'll just call them toxins. They have different methods or ways of being eliminated, right? So, for example, like let's just talk about alcohol, right? Like alcohol can be eliminated through the lungs, right? So it's not that you're smelling it on somebody's breath because they've like swallowed it and ingested it. Ethanol can actually be eliminated through the lung tissue, right? That liver is also processing alcohol. Then we're urinating alcohol out. So there's, again, all of these different components of alcohol that are being eliminated. So all of these different organs of elimination are basically working to eliminate these wastes. And then again, you were talking about like the liver, right? So if we're focusing on optimizing liver function and these different liver pathways to metabolize or break down these different toxins or byproducts, where do they go? We dump it into the bowel to be eliminated through stool. The lungs and the kidneys work well together. They're optimizing and buffering all the different minerals and oxygen and gases and these types of things within the blood. They're monitoring the pH. So all of these things are working to create this homeostasis or this balanced state of the body. So we have to consider all of these different emunctories or these different organs of elimination when we're thinking about detoxification.
Okay. So to dive a little bit deeper into that detoxification and talking about those pathways, as you said, they're all working on their own without any additional support. That's what their job is to do, is to eliminate what's built up. However, we are inundated with what we would say, toxins in those quotations. Again, those byproducts could be through our digestion, stress, hormones, all of those things that are kind of building up and we'll say congesting those organs. Because I think we hear so often in maybe other industries who want to maybe talk not so great about the health and wellness industry that we don't need to support those organs at all. We know that they are doing their own job. However, I think this day and age, we also need to be realistic with what we come into contact with, the amount of stress we're under, the food we eat, in which we have pesticides, herbicides, all of those things that are constantly being filtered through our body. So when we are talking about having that longevity and increasing our vitality and keeping all of those detoxification organs working optimally, how do we, or like, what do we start with to incorporate support on a day-to-day basis for our detoxification system?
Mhm. I think while we can talk about like optimizing those pathways, what I like to frame to people is what is creating the burden and like what is a realistic opportunity to reduce that toxic load. Or when we think about these different organs of elimination, these organs of elimination are also areas of exposure. Right. So when we talk about the skin and lymphatics, while these organs are ways of detoxing and eliminating those different products, again, that's also the area of exposure. The amount of stuff that we put on our skin is maybe not supportive and helpful for us. When we think about the lung and the kidney system working together, fragrances, volatile organic compounds that we're inhaling. And again, I don't want people to get really fearful, but just taking things as an opportunity. So, like when you run out of a product, maybe saying, "Hey, do I actually need to replace this? Like, do I actually need dryer sheets?" Even if you like, even finding like a natural alternative to a dryer sheet, like, do you even need a dryer sheet? I'm in Alberta, we need something. There's static everywhere because we're so dry. But honestly, I've switched to like wool balls in my dryer, or I just hang everything. So I'm like, I don't even need anything for the dryer because I'm hanging half my stuff to air dry. So again, just looking at those little opportunities of ways that we can reduce those exposures, and then figuring out from a daily practice, what can I do to support these different pathways, right? So, can I increase fiber in my diet? Because again, that's going to bind these different toxins that are going to help me have a better bowel movement. Can I increase my water intake? If I'm not exercising and sweating every day, can I maybe do some dry brushing, or could I do a contrast shower? Because if I'm going to shower anyways, may as well just end it on cold, and then I get some better like lymph flow in that regard anyways. So again, those little opportunities that we can create. Also, when we start talking about like herbs that can optimize these different pathways, we often categorize it in these medicinal compounds or capsules or tinctures or things that we can ingest. But there's some really great research for culinary herbs and how those culinary herbs and the spices and these herbs that we're adding to our nutrition, that these can also optimize, say, glutathione levels in our system. Or if we're getting adequate protein levels, these amino acids are working on different phases of liver detoxification, antioxidants working on these different pathways of liver metabolism as well. So how can I infuse this from a daily perspective? And then again, if I need to enhance, how can I look to certain products of where I might have a gap or maybe isn't a priority for me to get after?
Okay, I want to circle back to the topic that we were talking about in terms of how all of these systems work together. For somebody who is listening to our podcast right now and they are familiar with, we quickly touched on lymph, liver, kidneys. Um, when we talk about what those detoxification systems are, can we just do a very quick recap of them all? So it's bowels, kidneys, skin, lymph,
And
liver,
yeah, and then lung and kidneys. Yeah.
lung, and kidneys. Okay.
Mhm.
Now, with each of those, can we do just in a very quick summary, like one thing in a lifestyle factor that would support each of those categories?
Oh, I love this question.
Just simple, like
Absolutely.
one thing, like
Yeah.
liver, do this, lymph, do this. Just for people who are just starting on this daily detoxification, what's the top thing you recommend for each of these systems for detoxification?
Okay, let's go for the lungs, fresh air and deep belly breathing. Okay, so we're eliminating those different like carbon dioxide and everything. There's actually some really interesting data on weight loss and breathing and deep belly breathing and carbon dioxide. Then kidneys, uh, increasing your water consumption, keeping hydrated. Bowels, getting enough fiber, and I would say getting about 30 grams of fiber. And you don't necessarily need to track it, but if you've ever used MyFitnessPal, just do a daily recall of what you ate in a day and see how much fiber you get. And I would say 80% of people aren't getting like 30 grams of fiber. It's hard. It's really hard. So I give people props and credit for doing that and making that a big focus. Liver, for me, that would be like, I would say just taking the opportunity to reflect on things that could be potentially burdening that. So maybe doing a dry month if you don't already reduce alcohol, or if you are in alcohol, if you're enjoying alcoholic beverages, maybe doing a dry month, maybe looking at your consumption, and or offsetting that with hydrating as well. Um, Lymphatics, I'm going to say sweating every day and or getting some exercise. And then skin, I'm going to say reducing the amount of products that you're putting on your skin. I think I got them all. I
You
think
did,
I
you
got them all.
did.
Okay, perfect. Yeah.
I love that. I think those are all so realistic for people to, because we know like all of those things you just listed are beneficial for detoxification, but like beneficial for so many other things as well, cardiovascular, increasing our endurance, reducing our free radicals. There's just so many other supportive things with those if we have them in our everyday life. So I love that. Now, if people are at the point where they're already doing all those things, they are prioritizing those daily habits, they're reducing their exposure, they're switching things from more conventional to natural, and they want to up level that detoxification support a little bit more. What would you say is the next step? Are we looking at those culinary and medicinal herbs, or where would you go in that next move?
So yeah, definitely the nutritional piece. So if we can bump up again protein, because those amino acids are going to help with different phases of your liver, focusing on antioxidants within your food. So the way I like to phrase that is, can you get two colors with every meal, right? So coming especially from plant-based sources. Um, and then again, culinary herbs. So can we add things like turmeric and like cumin and paprika and all these different green herbs. If you're thinking about gardening this year, culinary herbs, like they might take over, so be mindful and do maybe some potted plants. But generally, if you think you have a black thumb, like try your hand at herbs, and that might be something, because again, you can pick these fresh herbs and add them to your food. And then I would say you can get a little bit deeper into some of the medicinal herbs. And I think like milk thistle is honestly one of my favorites. Milk thistle is going to support overall liver function. And again, if you're already doing those daily habits from a bowel perspective, like your fiber and all of those things, and you're pooping on a day-to-day basis, it's very easy then to switch or to look at things like supporting your overall liver health, which I would say milk thistle is, you know, relatively safe, and it's meant to be used long term. And one thing that I love about the liver is a fascinating organ. It's regenerative, and we have some decent studies about milk thistle actually promoting like better cellular regeneration of the liver and optimizing liver function. And if you've heard about glutathione is one of the most potent antioxidants within our body. And some people will take it externally for detoxification purposes and supporting overall liver function, but milk thistle actually helps our own production of glutathione. So we're kind of creating more self-sufficiency within our system anyways by taking milk thistle. Really nice benefits for reducing histamine. So even if you're somebody with like allergies, and we're talking, I like to kind of bring concepts together. So detox and allergies can be very interconnected, because allergies are, you know, an overstimulation or activation of the immune system. Sometimes that's coming from like metabolic burden or detoxification or like that overload. So if we support liver function, we can reduce that immune reactivity, and get better benefit or better reduction of those allergy symptoms. So milk thistle is a great one, and comes in capsules or tinctures. I really like capsules. So if you've never done a tincture before, capsules are really, really approachable too.
Yes, I've used both of the St. Francis capsules and liquid. I think they're both amazing as well. They're actually I've used a lot of milk thistles, and I'm not even just saying this because you're on the podcast, but like I always come back to the St. Francis because I just
Mhm,
feel the best on it. I feel like it's
mhm.
cleansing, but also not in a way that I'm like, hating my life. Like I feel
Yeah.
good on it. I will say, like, if you can handle a liquid tincture, I just find that to be so much more soothing in my personal opinion.
Mhm,
If you can, handle that. And I don't know about your recommendation for this, but
mhm,
I tend to always use the milk thistle and kind of amp it up with a few other ingredients like the digestive bitters.
mhm.
Um, but I also know that St. Francis has a few other combinations. Like if someone's just starting out, do you think just go with the milk thistle, or is there one that would do, more than just the liver support? Like what do you think?
Yeah, milk thistle is really approachable, but if we're looking for a combination, we have one called Hepato DR, which is a formulation that not only has some of the that has the detoxification capacity, but it also can support digestive function related to the liver as well. So if we need more like bile production and flow for fat digestion, or if we need more stimulation of stomach acid and digestive enzymes, because it does have, I believe, a little bit of globe artichoke within the hepato DR as well, which is one of the kind of key ingredients and bitters like you were talking about. It's a wonderful formulation. And bile in and of itself has additional detoxification properties. It's our own mild laxative within our system, so it helps with bowel motility. There's some interesting research about how that is one of the only factors or ways that we can eliminate heavy metals from our system. So bile will actually sequester that and help us to eliminate it from our bowels as well. So I really like the Hepato DR formula, and that one comes in both liquid and capsules. And this is just my like personal like bias and opinion. I really like dosing liver support at night, because our liver is actually most active at night. So if we're taking it before bed, it's just that nice additional kind of adjunctive support while we're sleeping. So our liver's working while we're sleeping.
Oh, good tip. Normally, I'm like trying to figure out where to dose that in a day, but bedtime would be perfect.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Just pop it on your nightstand or by your toothbrush, and it's really easy peasy to take. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, great. Now you mentioned that milk thistle could be taken more on a long-term basis. So when we're talking about daily detoxification year round, not just thinking about season change, like do you still say couple months on, couple months off, or like do you have any specific guidelines for that?
Yeah, I would say milk thistle, you don't need to take a break from. Like, you don't need to cycle through it, say, like Deep Immune or any of those different formulations. Hepato DR, unless you were using it for that additional digestive support. So, say you don't have a gallbladder and you're using Hepato DR for overall bile support and fatty digestion, I would say you could cycle Hepato DR on and off. But milk thistle, honestly, you can take it all the way through the year. Yeah, especially if you're, again, those factors that we can't change. So for some people, it might be like workplace exposure. So like hairstylists, for instance, I'm always like, are you wearing gloves? I see a lot of people who work on hair. I was like, okay, make sure you wear your gloves first. But also you're dealing with all of these different chemicals and ammonia and all this stuff. So you might need that additional liver support. So yeah, there's just certain circumstances where I'm like, yes, absolutely, you should take it every day. But again, it's very safe and you can take it long term.
Okay, good to know. Um, and then in terms of general, like kind of I already asked this, but just to generalize what we just talked about, um, do you typically recommend like when we're talking about detoxifying and using herbs to detoxify, are we looking at this as a whole body approach for detoxing all at once, or are you suggesting or like have some feedback? Are we looking at one organ at a time?
Mhm. So I would say there can be more of a tiered or strategic approach, especially again if somebody's not pooping, right? So we don't want to be pushing liver pathways or liver health if people aren't eliminating through their bowels, because again, you're making those toxins more fat soluble, so people just reabsorb it, and hold on to it instead of actually properly eliminating it, which can actually sometimes be more, I don't say more harmful, but people can be a bit more symptomatic with that as well. And then especially for amping up, say, liver function, I might want to boost lymphatic support for them. So there are other, again, lifestyle factors that we can do to move lymph. Or again, we have herbs and tools that can be really beneficial for that as well. St. Francis has a couple. We have one called Lymph Tonic, which is all lymphatic herbs. So herbs that are going to help from basically like a cellular level. So the cells can actually detox or let go of those wastes. We can bring that through secondary circulation and eliminate it. And then there's another product called Clear Glow, which is lymphatic and alterative herbs. And what the difference is like all alternatives are also lymphatic. So they'll work on the lymphatic system, but they'll also work on another organ of elimination. So, like burdock, for instance, is a great alternative because it works on the lymphatics and the skin, but it will also work on the liver. So that's why we talk about like burdock a lot for skin health, or clear glow is often talked about for skin health, because we're focusing on lymphatics, we're focusing on the liver, we're focusing on the bowel. So we see better results for, say, congested skin or issues where we're thinking that reduced elimination pathways are resulting in these other type of symptoms.
Good to know all of that. I would say the biggest takeaway that we can say right now is it doesn't
Mm-hmm.
matter what detoxification you're working on, you've got to poop.
Yeah. Yep. Fair enough. Yeah.
Number one rule before anyone does anything is make sure you're pooping every single day.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
So good. Okay, I have one more question for you. I want to know what you have heard in your practice and in this industry, the most common misconception about detoxification and what the actual truth is.
Mhm. I don't know if we talked about this before, but I'd say one of the biggest detox myths I have is that everybody needs to do a parasite cleanse. Um, so thank you, TikTok. Uh, so not everybody needs to do a parasite cleanse, and not everybody has a parasite. So um, and a lot of, again, we talked about these vague, kind of bringing this full circle. We talked about a lot of these vague symptoms from the get go, and they're like, yeah, well, all of these symptoms are also symptoms of you having a parasite, right? So I think that is a big misconception. Again, we can optimize detoxification and elimination through all of these different pathways. And in my practice, if people, are asking about parasites, we're doing a really detailed history. There's other symptoms that they might be presenting with, and then there's ways of testing if there's parasite that we can target. So not everybody needs to do a parasite cleanse. Yeah.
So glad you brought that up because it's definitely like social media has driven that. And as I
Yeah.
said about other cleanses and like detoxes, is I see people come in and go, something's wrong.
Yeah.
It's like things are way worse. And I'm like, okay, what are you doing? And they're like, I started this wormwood or I started this. I've been trying to do a
Yeah.
parasite cleanse. I'm like, okay. And when's the last time you had a bowel movement? It's been days. Of course you feel terrible. Like I see that so often with taking like not to put another company, but like the Cellcore company is the most common parasite I like company advertised on social media right now. And there's just so many things that can complicate what they're trying to do if they don't even have a parasite, because that's the other
Mhm.
thing. So it's
Mhm.
scary. And I would say, second thing to take away from this to our listeners is don't believe everything that you see on social media. Work with a professional. Talk to somebody who has either tested these products out, are familiar with the ingredients, but also can get really familiar with your history, your health, what's wrong with what might be wrong, what's going on. Do some tests. So don't jump to conclusions. Don't think you have every single, concern you see on social media because it can be a slippery slope.
Mhm. Yeah, and I encourage people, like, I think, it's a way for people to gather information, and I don't discourage people from doing that ever, and I'm like, "Bring your questions to me," because 'cause I'm like, "I will never judge you for empowering yourself with this information." I would rather, if you hear these things, that we actually have a really good conversation, and then we can rule out those red flags for you. I can actually work it up for you, like, if it's a consideration. So I'm like, "Okay, it's not this." And people say, "Could it be this?" I'm like, "Okay, these are the reasons maybe why I think that's not true." But again, these are things that we don't know. How are we gonna determine if this is, the case for you? So I always encourage people to bring that up with me. I'm never gonna people are so hesitant, like, "I heard this on TikTok." I'm like, "Great, what'd you learn? Tell me what you learned, and I'll tell you the truth." Yeah.
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 Yeah, definitely some really good conversation starters. And I mean, it gets a lot of people into also Joanne's place to start ask questions as well too. Like, do you have these products? And then we can open that conversation to be like, well, what do you think you need these products for as well? So,
Mhm.
so
Yeah,
good. Yeah, I would say
yeah,
that's definitely a big misconception.
yeah. It really opened up the conversation about castor oil, though, because a
Mm,
lot of people had never heard about castor oil before, and then it was all over TikTok. And then we got to have really good conversation around castor oil and like the topical applications and the different things that we could use it for. And again, you were talking about like older generations where it was very purgatives or laxatives and people were ingesting castor oil. So people like, do I drink it? I'm like, no, 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 don't drink it. Like put it on your skin. Let's do it in a different way. We don't need to like make you poop your brains out. So
yeah.
yeah, let's do it in a different way. Yeah.
Because that's the other thing. We want to be pooping, but not we want to be pooping on our own. Like we don't want to
Yeah.
have to drink a liter of castor oil to have those benefits.
Yeah.
Amazing. Well, Dr. B, I want to thank you so much for being on the podcast today and sharing your wealth of information. It's always a pleasure chatting with you, just so down to earth and really just providing our listeners with some really great resources. So thank you so much for being here today.
Yeah, thanks for asking to have me back. It was great to chat with you.
Thank you for joining us for another insightful episode of the Wellness on Purpose podcast. We hope you found the information valuable and inspiring to support you along your wellness journey. Before we go, a quick reminder. The content shared in this podcast is for educational purposes only. While we strive to provide accurate and up-to-date information, it's important to remember that everyone's health journey is unique. We strongly recommend consulting with your healthcare professional or a qualified health practitioner for personalized advice tailored to your specific needs and circumstances. Your well-being is a priority, and speaking to a healthcare professional ensures that you receive guidance that best aligns with your individualized health goals. If you have any questions or topics you'd like us to cover in future episodes, please reach out to us through our website. That's all for now. I hope you stay well, stay informed, and remember, your health is your greatest wealth. Until next time, take care.